And joining me now is Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today. Paul Butler is a former federal prosecutor. David French is a senior writer at the National Review. And Jonathan Lemire is a White House reporter for the Associated Press. John Lemire, let's just start with you. Look, the president says he wasn't aware of what Whitaker was out there saying about the Mueller investigation. Obviously, in terms of the role he's just walked into, that Trump has just put Whitaker in, the Mueller investigation is front and center right now. What do you actually know from your reporting in the White House when it comes to Whitaker, what he had said previously about this investigation, and what bearing that had on Trump's decision to appoint him?
Yeah, the president's claim that he wasn't aware of Whitaker's stance defies believability. He was very much aware, as you read from that report. He was a fan of Whitaker's appearances on cable television. That's when he first came across the president's radar, and he was very much aware that he was very critical of the Mueller probe. And that was part of his thinking here as to why he is being installed as acting attorney general. Not just on Mueller, but he felt like this was someone who would be loyal to him. That was always his complaint about Jeff Sessions, that he recused himself from the Russia probe, which he felt like was not something he should have done, but more than that, reflected that he wasn't loyal to him personally, like he deemed Bobby Kennedy was for his brother, or Eric Holder was for President Obama, his Roy Cohn, if you will. Of course, that's not the Attorney General's job, but that's how President Trump viewed it, that he wanted him to be his own sort of attorney, if you will. He has been very frustrated with the pushback that he has seen from both sides of the aisle on the choice of Whitaker. He believed that Republicans would have his back on this, that he thought that Whitaker would be someone he could leave in this post in the acting. You know, he wouldn't be a permanent choice, but he could stay in there as the acting attorney general for a while. But now there's been such criticism and such, we saw like this lawsuit today filed, that he feels like that there's pressure now that he might need to move to appoint a permanent attorney general sooner than he might have wished. And we saw some of that frustration bubble up in his interview over the weekend, his tweets last week, pushing back against the idea that Whitaker shouldn't have that post because he wasn't confirmed. In fact, even saying, well, Bob Mueller, the special counsel, he wasn't confirmed, leaving out the idea that he doesn't need to be confirmed for that position, and of course had been previously when he was FBI director.
And that's an interesting point to pick up on, Susan. So this idea that Trump is invoking a 20-year-old law here on appointments, on vacancies, saying that basically 210 days, about 7 months, Whitaker, under this original plan, could stay in this job without confirmation. The interpretation there from the White House, this obviously the subject of a lawsuit right now. We can talk about that in a minute. But that idea that initially, at least, that 7-month window might take you through the conclusion of the Mueller investigation, because we've gotten these indications that might be drawing near an end. How do you feel right now about the likelihood, the potential of Trump being able to keep Whitaker in this job through the conclusion of the Mueller investigation? Does that seem less likely now than it did, say, a week ago?
You know, I think it does. You know, we don't know whether this lawsuit that was just filed will succeed or not, but it is one more thing that Democrats and critics are trying to do to just put the White House on warning about Matt Whitaker and about their concerns about him serving as acting attorney general. I think the president has been taken aback by the response, the heavy response he's gotten, not just from Democrats, but from some congressional Republicans against Matt Whitaker in this very crucial job. And I think they do feel like they need to move forward more rapidly than they expected to find some kind of nominee. It's going to be hard to find somebody who President Trump trusts, who thinks will have his back, who is also going to be acceptable to folks on the Hill.
And Paul Butler, the fear from critics here is, obviously they say there's always the potential of Whitaker in this position to try to kill the investigation completely. But short of that, I'm curious from the standpoint of critics of this, people who worry about the independence of the Mueller investigation potentially being threatened here. What are the steps that Whitaker in this position as acting attorney general, short of just doing away with the investigation wholesale, what are the steps he could take in that position?
So, Steve, those concerns may have already been realized. Under the law, if Whitaker were to fire Mueller, he would have to notify Congress immediately. But Whitaker has the power to curtail all of these significant actions, and there's no requirement that Congress be told right away. And so Whitaker can say, don't subpoena Trump to the grand jury, or don't indict Roger Stone or Donald Trump. And here's the crazy thing. Again, if that's already happened, we wouldn't know, because under the law, those kinds of actions, those kind of limits by the Attorney General don't have to be reported until the end of the investigation. But here's the saving grace. There are right now 36 sealed indictments in the federal district court in D.C. That's way more than normal. They're secret. We don't know if they're brought by Robert Mueller or somebody else. But what was known is that immediately after the midterms, that the president was going to replace the attorney general with somebody like Whitaker who might try to impede the investigation. So this could have been very strategic action on the part of Robert Mueller to try to insulate the investigation. Again, 36 sealed indictments, 14 filed just since August.
Well, David French, hearing that Republicans may be losing a little bit of patience with this idea. What is your sense of this? Because the administration, again, is saying, they got 200 days, they can leave him in the position. You got Democrats filing suit today saying, no, it's unconstitutional on its face. How long do you think this is sustainable politically and perhaps even legally for the administration?
I don't think it's as sustainable as Trump wanted it to be. I think that much is very clear. There is widespread discontent with this move. This is a consequence of a hasty, ill-considered, effective termination of his attorney general without a replacement lined up. And so this is something that's causing a lot of discontent. And I think, ironically enough, is working exactly the opposite way that Trump intended. I think that when you have an acting attorney general who's already hamstrung in an important sense by lacking the unanimous support of the president's party, when he's already hamstrung in an important sense, he now has, as a practical and political matter, I think, far less of a firm hand on the Mueller investigation than you would want to see in an attorney general who was confirmed by majority of the Senate, comes in under a constitutionally proper process. Lacking that, he's hamstrung. If he takes strong action in the Mueller investigation, it's going to dramatically magnify the extent and magnify that scandal.
And Susan, it does. If this goes to it happens to take the direction now that there is an appointment placed before the Senate for confirmation with the Mueller investigation outstanding. I got to imagine those Senate confirmation hearings are going to be almost exclusively about that investigation. Yeah,
no kidding. They will be fierce, and of course, Democrats will be fierce about it. But some Republicans also are concerned about what's happening here and want to preserve standards of the rule of law. And remember, Republicans hold the Senate, but not by that much. So you have a defection of 2 or 3 Republican senators, you could have a nomination in peril. You also have a president, if he puts forward a nominee for attorney general who just squeaks through without any Democratic votes, that does not serve to bolster kind of the public trust that they can believe in whatever it is that attorney general is going to do on this to be fair and accurate in the interest of the rule of law.
Well, shifting topics a little bit here. We said this at the top of the broadcast. There's also some breaking news being reported by the Washington Post at this hour. The Post reporting that Ivanka Trump used a personal email account to conduct government business, sending hundreds of emails last year, many of them apparently in violation of federal records rules. According to the Post, quote, some aides were startled by the volume of Ivanka Trump's personal emails and taken aback by her response when questioned about the practice. Trump said she was not familiar with some details of the rules, according to people with knowledge of her reaction. Spokesperson for Ivanka Trump's lawyer acknowledged her use of a private email, but tried to delineate her conduct from that of Hillary Clinton. Quote, to address misinformation being peddled about Ms. Trump's personal email, she did not create a private server in her house or office. There was never classified information transmitted. The account was never transferred or housed at Trump Organization. No emails were ever deleted, and the emails have been retained in the official account in conformity with records preservation laws and rules. That, again, the statement from Ivanka Trump's spokesperson. Jonathan Lemire, what more can you tell us just in terms of context here with this news just breaking?
Has the use of a private email server been a political hot button issue lately? Yeah, this is coming to light tonight. Certainly, this is less than ideal. Some White House advisors were taken aback as the Post reports. Just the sheer number of these that it began during the transition and has continued, and it is in violation of federal records rules. But it's also just again, it's a moment of optics. I mean, of course, every night I covered the Trump campaign. I was there every night at these rallies. He railed against the use of the private emails. Every day. It was a huge talking point. It became the centerpiece of everything the FBI did and the James Comey letter at the end that many people think was the deciding factor in this election. So you can imagine Democrats across the country tonight are just pounding their heads against their desks saying, like, this is happening again, about the hypocrisy. I mean, there are some differences here, as just laid out in the lawyer's statement, but it's something that just shows, it points again to sort of the sloppiness of this administration in so many ways. That, you know, it was known previously that Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner and a few other key aides had been using private email servers when they first took office. The sheer volume of it, the fact that it continued, that's the centerpiece of this terrific Washington Post story tonight. But it goes to show that, again, that this White House has had such a haphazard system of starting to actually govern, and now almost 2 years in, they're still grappling with something that should have been addressed long ago.
Yeah, and David, I think that's my reaction is a little bit of what John was just saying there in terms of if one of the sort of fundamental bases of the Trump campaign in 2016 was this email question. They're pointing to all these distinctions in the statement here, but how would you not be on top of that from the very beginning after running that kind of campaign?
I mean, it's sloppy. It's definitely a problem. But let's be really clear about one thing. It's not a minor detail to say that there's no classified information on those emails, at least so far as we know. The inclusion of top secret information in these private emails with Hillary is something that put it on a whole different plane. It implicated potentially the Espionage Act. So we're dealing with different orders of magnitude, but it's still sloppy. It's still a problem. It's still not what you want to see. This is something that should have been dealt with immediately at the start of this administration.
All right, David French, Susan Page, Paul Butler, Jonathan Lemire, thank you all for being with us. And coming up, President Trump as the commander-in-chief of the